Hi, this is George Sandman. I'm the founder and CEO of Growth Drive. Growth Drive is the #1 best-selling business advising platform, and this is our podcast, The Business Advisor Hot Seat. Now, in the hot seat, you're going to hear from industry leaders, thought leaders, your colleagues who are going to share tips, techniques, war stories about building a thriving advisory business based on delivering client wins. We're going to get into it. We'll get into it about the Growth Drive methodology, the Clarity software, what we see out in the world, so much more than just the system. And I'm also the author of The Growth Driving Advisor, which is based on over a decade of being an advisor to advisor, working with you and your colleagues, helping them build their practices, helping them through client engagements, and it's really proven strategies for leading businesses from stuck to best in class. Check it out. So strap in. We're going to light this up. Here we go. This week's episode is brought to you by Growth Drive and the C3D certification. If you're looking to expand your reach and relevance with business owning clients, whether you're a business advisor or wealth advisor, this is a certification for you. And after completing it, you will understand how to make profits and transferable value M&A price actionable, how to maximize results for your clients. So get the details at growthdrive.com/C3D, scan the QR code, register. Listen, this is the path to building a thriving advisory business based on delivering client wins. Our guest this week is Mike Desiato, and Mike has become a good friend, a very active member of the Growth Drive community, and I'm excited to have Mike on as we discuss his earning being the Growth Drive Member of the Year for 2024. So here we go. Okay. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And this week on the Business Advisor Hot Seat podcast, I'm welcoming back, right? This is your second interview, Mike Desiato from Business Transition Specialists in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And why? Because Mike earned being designated the Growth Drive Member of the Year for 2024. Mike, really excited. And thank you for all you do. Maybe we could start with you. I love working with you. Maybe we can start with you introducing yourself and talking a little bit about what you do, your background, where you came from, and what BT Specialists is doing in the market right now.
Sure. Thank you, George. And I'm very honored to be named Planner of the Year, Growth Drive Planner of the Year. So my background is interesting. I come from a world of public accounting, right? So my initial career was that of a CPA, and I still am a CPA. And I spent over 40 years in the public accounting profession, mostly as a tax professional, working with mid-sized business owners and their companies. And throughout my career, I sought to be more of a problem solver for my clients, not just a technician. And I always position myself and as their a problem solver for them. And something very transformative happened to me in my career about 15 years ago, where I had a client come to me and he said to me, "Mike, I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to get out of my company for the money I need so I can retire. And I've been to a number of other professionals, and none of them have been able to help me. They've been all leading me down these paths that haven't really come to fruition, and I'm asking you to help." And that kind of started me on my journey to get more involved and get more familiar and educated on the issue of exit planning and growth value advising. So I did start my path, and I did get designations. If you look at my resume, you'll see I am a certified exit planning advisor, a certified exit planner, a certified value growth advisor. So I got really educated in this area, and also now a growth driver. And going back to that client, I did help him. I did help him get out of his company. And leveraging my tax knowledge, I was able to do it in a way where he paid no additional taxes to get out, and he got the money he needed. And that kind of got me, again, as I said, started on this path of advising business owners about focusing on how they're going to monetize and maximize the value of their business in the context of their exit plan.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So today, I retired from public accounting about 2 years ago, and I formed my business transition specialist, which is a full service exit planning and value growth advisory firm. And my passion today is to help business owners with what I like to call probably one of the most significant financial events of their lives, which is the successful exit from their companies, uh, in a way in which they get the amount of money they're going to need in order to, continue and to start. Some people call it their second act. I've heard it called the third act, but to start the next chapter in their lives. And many of them, oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. It's probably one of my exit planning clients
No
calling.
worries.
But many owners only have one shot at getting this right. And so my goal is to make sure that that one shot is in fact their best shot.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're nailing it. There's a lot to unpack there. So
So
you're
that's my elevator speech, right? So I got it down pretty
yeah.
bad,
Oh
right?
yeah, well your firm, your transition from that's when we met, right?
Yeah.
You were still with Cherry.
Cherry Becker, which is a large regional CPA firm, was a tax partner there. I had a great career there. Very appreciative of working with them. But yeah, you know, I was retiring, and I didn't want to sit around and do anything. I wanted to use the knowledge and that I've gained over 40 years of working with business owners in a way now that would help them again deal with focusing on their businesses, helping them make their businesses more transferable,
Yeah.
and ultimately getting more value from it when they exit.
But and when you and I first started talking, it was you were just on your way. You were busy transitioning from accounting into doing BT specialist full time, and we had some initial conversations. And one that I always sticks in my, like the conversation that sticks in my mind. We talked, and you looked at it. You were looking at a couple of different alternatives, and you asked me something along the lines of, "Hey George, if I get involved with Growth Drive, am I going to be able to help clients understand the value of their business, how to make their business more valuable, how to prepare it for exit, and am I going to be able to deliver what my clients need?" And at the time I said yes, and I say yes today. In fact, you have lived through how much we've evolved just in the
Yeah.
2 years we've been working together, and you came in. Um, but you've done your part, and you have participated in training. And when we use the word participate, I mean, right? It's pretty immersive. You got to roll up. You're not going to sit there and stare at videos, and we're not going to let you get away with that. So you've participated in our what we used to call our launch course, and you came down here to Charleston and participated in the certification program when we used to host those live. You participated in facilitation. In fact, and one of the reasons that you jumped immediately to mind as one of the people we should consider as member of the year is you and I we just had one last week, right? We have these great deep conversation. You're very detail oriented. You're incredibly thoughtful, and analytical, and you ask great questions, and you hold me accountable, as everyone does, but uniquely, you are very comfortable asking me really tough questions, and I love it. And you literally have your thumbprint is on many of the things we have evolved to deliver. One of which is our facilitation training, which we're going to be offering again a little later this year, and and I love it. And you dove in and you're doing it, you're delivering it, right? You're working with clients, you're helping them move their way forward, and they're really fun cases, real fun cases to discuss. So thank you. And any comments?
Well, yeah, I mean, as you pointed out at the beginning of your comments here, I did, when I was looking to transition to solely exit planning, I did look at, I can't tell you how many platforms and
Mhm.
how many different services I looked at, right? And I looked at a ton of them, right? But some of them were, very superficial. They were more marketing oriented, very, very top level, not a lot of detail, very surface level. Um, some were, some could get, some were very too deep, right? So you had stuff that was really deep, and it was like, there's no business owner in the world is going to sit and listen to
Yeah.
me ask them all this stuff. It's just not going to happen. So it was more, a lot of them were more geared toward, if I was dealing with a CFO, not the owner.
Hmm.
Right. So that I knew that wasn't going to work. So the one I landed on was yours, because yours really speaks to what's really relevant to an owner, right? The three dimensions of business growth, the initial assessment, clarity one, assessment 24, growth driving objectives, kind of correlating that strategic capacity score to a range of business value. And then more importantly, not only showing them where they may fit in that range, but to me, being an exit planner, that's only half the story. The other part of the story is that's fine. This is what your business is worth. This is what it could be worth. But the real question is, what does it need to be worth when you walk away in whatever time frame you have? So that we call that wealth gap, the wealth gap, right? The difference between what you're worth today and what your business needs to be worth in order to fulfill your financial goals when you retire. That to me is that kind of, and this is a phrase that we use in exit planning as well. If you're a SEPA, you can relate to this. That's kind of the triggering event, right? Once
Yeah.
people once people see that, well, I got this value gap in my business, I have this wealth gap in my planning. More often than not, they say, yeah, we got to do something. And your tool, that Clarity One tool, does it so efficiently in a very short, manageable period of time, not too long, and just about the right period of time that you can keep a CEO's attention to stay with you and not get lost in the weeds. And it kind of sets up the rest of the process. So
Yeah.
once I've used that, and I can tell you right now, I got like three projects going on with it. Once they see that, and they see the power of it, and they see that there's a lot of work to be done, then it's easy for me. It's been easy for them to take the next step, which is to do the deep dive analysis. And you and we worked through one, that I currently have. And then after the deep dive analysis, to do the strategic capacity report, which I'm about to deliver. And then from there, we step into, as your program lays out, right? And I like the fact that it's laid out in a process, strategic planning, a strategic planning session where you come down with strategic action steps, accountabilities, and timelines. And then ultimately it's implementation,
Yeah.
and follow up. And to me, that's where the value is. And again, your process has it all laid out. Many of them don't go that far. They kind of give reports on, this is what we think your company is worth, and they kind of highlight value drivers, but there's no implementation guidance. There's no process. I guess they would imagine that people have their own, and maybe they do, and they use this as an ancillary tool. But yours is complete. Yours starts from the beginning and goes all the way through the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And that's
And
what I like about it. And I know, you're constantly working on it. So that's good. And I'm sure you're going to make a lot more improvements to it. And I'm sure your goal, and I'll work with you on it, being a member of the community, is to kind of get it to be, the platinum standard in the industry.
yeah, it's interesting you say that. And thank you, Mike. Thank you very much for recognizing, just verbalizing. And I did not mean for that to become an infomercial, but I thank
Well,
you.
just make sure the check's in the mail. I'll be looking. No,
Exactly,
only
exactly.
only serious.
Um, well, you have to come down to Charleston this fine. I know you've already said you're coming.
Well,
But
for me, it's going up because I'm south of you.
coming up. That's right. Everyone else comes down. But you're a pleasure to work with. Something you just said, um, something, it's this whole process. And I will admit that I used to give the horses, when I started, I've been doing this for a very long time. And I started with, well, you have your own process, Madam Advisor,
Right.
and why don't you go do it? And the more I work with advisors, the more it became clear and that let's enunciate a process. And it is not we are not a franchise. You don't have to do, these steps. However, when you follow the process as you are in that case that you just brought up, it logically moves forward. And I'll be the first to say, you know, I learned this process from all of you, right? And it's I've done X, now what? I've done Y, now what? And that's what's prompted us to develop the tools, the support. But I, but yeah, thank you. I guess that's a very long-winded thank you. It's great to see it play out because you're super active. I mean, you just earned a succession planning
Yeah.
certificate, right?
Yeah. I think it's the ISPA, the International Succession Planning Association, ISPA. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through the succession training program, which
Yep.
is, it's interesting because I know what exit planning is, but succession planning is, well, I don't know how you would, I mean, I don't want to mischaracterize it, but I think succession planning is, in my mind, is part of, although they will say it the other way around. I think succession planning is part of exit planning. They'll say exit planning is part of succession planning, but mostly the succession planning training really is more apropos for businesses that are going to be transferred to the next generation of of business owners, intra-family transfers. Like, the parents are going to pass it on to the next generation, or if not the next generation, then maybe the key employees. But they have no interest in selling, to a strategic buyer or private equity, or anything like that. Their goal is to make sure the business continues after they're gone. And that's what succession planning talks about. And it's necessary, right? A lot of,
Yeah, absolutely.
especially family-owned businesses, of which there were many,
Hmm.
there needs to be a succession plan in place. And oftentimes, um, if something were to happen to the parents before their kids are ready to take over, then there's that minefield there, that no man's land where, if the parents can't come to work tomorrow and the kids aren't ready, what do you do then?
Now what? Yeah, sure.
Now what? So now there is planning, and you learn about it in the succession planning curriculum, that they call it succession bridges, where you can put together a plan with key people, and you got to keep the key folks on hand to make sure they stick around, and they're going to be charged with and be responsible for, bringing up the next generation of children into the business, but they're going to be rewarded handsomely. It's not like
Sure.
doing it out of the generosity of their hearts. There are plans for them to get paid well, have some kind of phantom equity stake in the business, or maybe even ownership, in the business. So, oftentimes, people don't think about, the contingencies that happen, and they don't plan for that. So oftentimes when I get involved with any client, even if it's not succession, maybe it's just exit, and they say, well, I'm not ready to exit right now. And I go, okay, well, eventually you're going to have to, I can tell you that you will leave your business, right? So
Yeah, I talked to God, and you're leaving.
everyone's leaving, you're leaving. But before we get into like the real weeds as to what you need to do to really, get your company ready, and, maybe you don't want to do that right now. What do you have in place if you can't go to work tomorrow?
Mhm.
What's going to happen to your business? Forget about, yeah, I know your estate planning documents say, okay, it's going to be transferred to my wife or a trust. And okay, that's great. You've planned for the transition of ownership, but have you planned for the successful transition to something, or some entity or some group where the business will continue? Right? Because I can transfer ownership, but then the business will go down the toilet, and great, now your heirs own something worth nothing. But you transferred ownership successfully through your estate planning document. But have you thought about, making sure the business continues on in your absence? That's not going to be dealt with in your estate planning documents in most cases. It's not. You just provide for beneficiaries, And okay, that's where ownership is going to go. Great. All right, now your kids, your wife own, or your spouse owns the business. All right, how about the business? I mean, how's it going to continue? And
Yeah. Well, and that you're getting into the concept of the immortal business that we talk about
right,
a lot. Like,
right,
how do we create an immortal business?
correct.
And that business needs to recognize it's fascinating, man. This is a topic I know you and I could geek out for the rest of the afternoon on this. But how do we create an immortal business, and how do we anticipate and plan in advance for contingencies? And one of the contingencies is, something, God forbid, but something terrible happens. How do we make sure that the business continues? And it's
Right.
interesting. So you're super active. You, for a period, stood up and ran an exit planning chapter. I know that that has now evolved. You
Mhm.
also participate in our internal study group at Growth Drive. Thank you. And to what extent are I know you collaborate with others. Are you collaborating with wealth advisors on these issues?
Well, as you pointed out, I started the Exit Planning Institute for Lauderdale chapter, and I ran that for 2 years. And then the folks that helped me organize that chapter, we kind of left the EPI network and we formed our own group called the Exit Advisor Alliance. And we're
Okay.
doing the same thing. Um, we're basically having sessions and holding informative sessions around best practices in the
Yeah.
exit planning world. And, it's basically designed for advisors who practice in this area, right? So there are many advisors, right? There's investment bankers, there's attorneys, there's CPAs, there's business consultants, there's fractional CFOs, there's insurance folks, there's exit planners, right? So all these folks, come to our meetings, and we have topics around topic best practices and what's going on in exit planning. How do you deal with
This week's episode is brought to you by Growth Drive and the C3D certification. If you're looking to expand your reach and relevance with business owning clients, whether you're a business advisor or wealth advisor, this is a certification for you. And after completing it, you will understand how to make profits and transferable value M&A price actionable, how to maximize results for your clients. So get the details at growthdrive.com/C3D, scan the QR code, register. Listen, this is the path to building a thriving advisory business based on delivering client wins.
buy-sell agreements in exit planning? How do you deal with insurance in exit planning? How do you deal with key people? How do you keep them on board? How about options? We talk about a lot about exit planning options. A sale to a strategic buyer is not the only way out. I mean, you
That's
have
right.
VSOPs, you have insider sales, you have sales to PE firms. So we have panel discussions around that. So I'm on the board there, and I'm helping make that new organization a reality. And I enjoy doing that. And we preach, as you and I have talked, we preach that this whole process is a collaborative process, right? No one has all the answers. There's no one advisors who can. There's so many different issues that need to be addressed in someone's succession, exit plan. There's no one advisor who has all the answers, and so it takes a collaborative team, and it takes someone to be the quarterback, if I can use that in a sports analogy. You need someone to go in there and basically take work on behalf of the business owner, but work with the business owners and other advisors to get everyone around the table and say, look, this is what Mr. or Mrs. So and so wants to accomplish. These are his or her goals. Let's use our collective knowledge in our respective fields and come back with a comprehensive plan that addresses all these things. In one and speak with one voice. In other words, we're basically going to talk to the owner with one direction. This is
Yeah.
this is the plan that we developed. Here it is. Unfortunately, what I see in the world, and you probably in the business world, and you do too, right? Owners have different advisors, and they talk to them, and then when they talk to their attorney about some portion of exit planning, the attorney's going to give them their little narrow view of what they can do to help. and then they talk to their CPA, and the CPA is going to talk to them about, well, you need an audit, you need better records, and so they get bits and pieces of it, and oftentimes they get contradictory advice, right?
Yes.
And then what happens is they go throw up their hands and they go, well, I don't know what to do. This guy tells me this person tells me that. So they get confused, and they kind of just, when you get confused, what's the default action? You just
You turn
stop.
off.
You
Yeah.
stop. So we try to preach, look, it's better if we do this as a team and we come together and we present one plan, right? It's a collective plan, but it's our one plan that we all agree upon, so that the owner doesn't get mixed messages, mixed signals, gets confused, and then just abandons the project. But I can tell you, we all talk about it. We all acknowledge, yes, we love this, blah, 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 blah. But, trying to get it to happen is very hard, uh,
Yeah.
because a lot of folks are indoctrinated, or I shouldn't use that word. They're used to their old ways. That they like being in their lanes, and they also, if it's their client, or if it's that client, if that's their client, in other words, they brought it to the table, they get very fearful of losing control of the client, right?
Yeah.
Or you coming in and mucking up their client, and messing their relationship up, right? So you have a lot of that fear in there from other advisors who are not so willing to share their clients with you, because they fear that you may screw it up for them. And
Yeah.
so, part of the one of the goals of this organization, the Exit Advisor Alliance, is to build trust amongst the advisors. Build that foundation of trust, that we trust each other. We know we're competent. We're not charlatans, right? And you can trust us. We can work together. And that's one of the goals too, is not only to highlight best practices, but also to build trust amongst advisors so that they can participate in a collaborative way.
I absolutely love that because it's critically important, and we can't solve. None of us can solve this market challenge alone. And I absolutely love what you're doing. You know, it's you've heard me talk about it, right? I've now sat with in two different workshops, 44 wealth advisors, exit planning wealth advisors, and of those 44, only two were willing to collaborate with a business advisor on their client because you use the word muck it up. That's exactly right. They're like, I don't know, I'm going to introduce. Let me just pick a name out of the blue, like Frank. I'm going to introduce George. I use my own name. And I don't know, George is going to run amok in there and he's going to do whatever the heck he wants. And he's going to bring in his friends. And
Right.
suddenly my client is like, my client started with one goal in mind. And next thing I know, they've disappeared and they've reappeared somewhere else altogether. It's
Right.
no good for
They
the
fear
company.
they fear losing they fear losing the lead role in the
Yeah.
relationship, even though you're doing good things for them, right? And they may not be able, they may agree with what you're doing for them, but you may supplant them now as their primary business advisor.
Hmm.
So they want primacy. They want the client to look to them, and it's my client. And they're afraid that if they let other people in, that it may threaten their position as being, the primary business, or being the client's primary business advisor. I mean, there's all kinds of psychological reasons, right?
Yeah, there are. Yeah,
I
there
it's beyond my pay grade, but but
are.
I, but I, but I, even though people don't say it, I can sense it. And even when I was in public accounting, as practicing as a CPA, I can tell you CPAs are probably the worst offenders of this. You
They're,
know, they
they're,
don't want anybody near their
they're
client.
not the best behaviors. Yeah.
Well, but they don't like people coming in and telling their client, "Hey, you should do this," and maybe it contradicts what they told them in the past, and now this other person's coming in and say, "No, we think you should do that," and now they kind of look bad because they didn't come up with the idea, and there's all kinds of self-serving interests that
There
get
are.
in the way, and maybe it's, again, the goal of this organization, one of them is to make sure that hopefully we build trust amongst each other so that we're not hesitant to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny. We are busy building a broad and I know your name's on the list. A committee that's about the future of the of being a growth advisor, being a business advisor. What does it mean? What do we do? What do we not do? How do we communicate? What are our standards? because it's so ill-defined and leads to the type of ultimately it's the client. The client isn't being served. And there's a ton that we should be doing, we could be doing for these clients. And by the way, making a fair return for ourselves in the process, but it needs to be within a coordinated, I love that what you just described as a coordinated context. And that is something that I'm talking to individuals about, and I'm also talking to, to enterprise on this exact point. How do we move from ad hoc and not really serving the client to organized and process guided, right? So that the client's being served and everybody's helping the client move forward in a way where the client has, pardon the term, clarity about what they need to do to get the success they want. And I'm totally cool if the wealth advisor is going to be the lead dog, brings the client to the table. But the wealth advisor is never going to do what you do, right? They're
Right.
just they're just never going to do it.
Right.
Uh, they don't want to, and in often cases can't.
Right.
Uh, can't because they have handcuffs on.
Right. Right. They can't do it.
Compliance,
So,
yeah,
so they're afraid to get it. If they can't do it, then if they're a little fearful of anybody else doing it.
yeah,
And I understand that. I can
sure.
see where they're coming from. I'm sure they have been burned in the past
Yep,
by referring people out to other advisors and getting burned. So they're saying, well, this is just another example of that. So, I'm a little, yeah. So it's tough. So the only way to get over that is that you have to build trust uh,
yeah,
with
yeah,
them. They have to trust you. You have to trust them. You have to trust the other advisors. And the only way you build trust is through familiarity and interaction. So we try to have our meetings, going back to the Exit Advisor Alliance, we try to have meetings where most of the meetings are panel and open forum discussions where people just, say what they would do and talk about what they would do. And we kind of debate it friendly, but you're kind of getting a sense of the competency and the ability of the people in the room uh,
sure.
before you turn them loose on a client of yours, right? And we use case studies for that too. We kind of go through case studies at times, and we show people come in and say, "This is how I see it, and this is my approach." And if that is it, that again, that kind of helps people get more comfortable with each other. But yeah, the way professional services are organized today, for the most part, everyone works in a silo, and they work in a firm that does X, and that's all they do, and they come to the table with that siloed um, that siloed perspective, and they have to consciously say, look, I'm going to break out of that mindset, and I'm going to look at my clients' total overall goals, not just their insurance needs, not just their wealth management needs. Yes, I can add to that, but they have bigger goals that need to be attacked and conquered, and I don't have all the skills necessary, and I need to be part of a team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you and I are in lockstep on that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's a rapidly evolving,
Yeah.
thank God it is evolving, rapidly evolving. And you, obviously, you're out there, you're a lifelong learner, but you're also a leader, and you're out there saying, okay, here's what we need to be doing. And I love the fact that that you're running, that you're running that group. And frankly, I'd love to be a fly on the wall. And by the way, anytime I'm on a plane, anytime that I could,
Well, if you want to, we have meetings throughout the year. If you want to come in and be a speaker, let me know.
yeah, well, you let me know when. That's all
Okay.
I need.
I will talk to the
So
programming committee and see if we have any slots available.
I love the fact that that's awesome. Uh, that's awesome. So, Mike, we've been chatting for about half an hour now.
Okay.
Where do you see your advisory business going?
Um, where do I see it going? Well, continuing, I hope, in positively in the right direction. Um, I see it. I see me getting busier than I am now, but I'm busy now, but I can see it myself getting more clients.
Yeah, I
Uh,
believe that. Yeah,
and
I'm going to help you with that. Yeah,
Yeah, but I like to get more clients that are 3 to 5 years out, or maybe more from an exit. I seem to get brought into situations where they're already going to market. They're ready to leave. They're done. Right. So even though I take them through the Clarity One exercise, they go, okay, that's fine, but I still want out. I just don't want to work anymore. I'm out of it. I'm not going to spend the money or the time or the
Hmm.
effort, right, to make that value gap. I'm not trying to close that gap anymore. I don't have the energy. So I get involved a lot with the now recently, a lot of folks just say, look, I want to retire, I want out. Now what are my options? So I get involved, I call it the back end of it, right? When they're ready to exit,
Yep.
they decided to exit stage. And so I get a lot in that area. And oftentimes I'm brought in because of my tax skills. And I try to help them structure the transaction and minimize their tax consequences, and also to help them recast financial statements, for Q of E and things of that nature. But I'd like to get more. I want to get more involved with people who are 5 years out, 7 years out. Right? They're not ready yet, but they know they're going to leave, and they recognize that, and they realize that they have to build a value of their company. And I like to I like to see myself getting more of that work.
Absolutely. And you bring so much to those engagements. Um, it's interesting. And those of you, ladies and gentlemen, listening out there, if you have clients um, and you haven't had this conversation with them, Mike just hit on, Mike, again, correct me if I'm wrong, getting involved with a client 5 years, 7 years
Right.
out of,
Right.
and it's always couched in terms of, we're going to give you the option. I'm not saying you have to sell your business in 5 years. I'm just going to say you will have the option to sell it
Well, right.
at a defined value, right?
Right. Not only that, I tell them, look, you never know when that phone's going to ring, and you may get an offer. And
Yep.
and the question then becomes for them is, are you ready to take on the due diligence surrounding that offer? So I always tell them, look, my preaching to them is always be exit ready, because
Yes.
you're always exit ready, right? And you're doing things to make yourself exit ready. You're going to be in a better position. You're going to give yourself more opportunity. You're going to give yourself more options. And as Chris Snyder, the founder of EPI, says, exit planning is really nothing more than good business planning.
Yeah.
Think
I,
about it.
yeah.
That's all. You're basically just making your business stronger, better. And even if you don't sell to an outside third party, let's assume you pass it on to your kids, or maybe you sell to your insiders. Well, you've made your business stronger. You made it more cash flow positive, or you made it more robust, which is going to help you, especially on an internal transfer, because they're going to need that. They're going to need that company to be cash flowing and be strong to support the debt necessary to buy you out. So, and then if you have kids, it's a great opportunity for you to work with them and try to get them involved in making the business better. So
You
here's
bet.
a whole bunch of projects they can start working on with you, and it's an opportunity for you to mentor them and to grow them.
Yeah, I agree with Chris, and I would echo and say the exit plan is the ultimate strategic plan because it puts the personal and professional goals at the same point on the horizon. And you make a fabulous point. Well, creating a business that has predictable profits and cash flow and predictable sustainable growth, there's kind of no bad that's going to come of that, right?
Yeah, it
No
does
bad is going to.
has nothing to do necessarily with exit planning.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's easy. The business is easy to run,
Yep.
right? And it's more transferable, and your exit options are unlimited.
And your exit options are unlimited.
Unlimited. You're not
And,
you're
and,
not bound by, well, the only option now, because I haven't worked on this thing, and the business is so reliant on me, right? Because you have key risk, key person risk, because the owner is involved in everything. You limit your options,
that's right.
right? So yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's kind of the goal.
Well, and most transfers or many transfers are internal transfers, and those your client could end up being the bank. And
Well, we try to, I have a process that I put them through where they don't, I minimize their risk of making that happen and not being the bank. Maybe a bank for a little bit of a period of time, but not ultimately holding an unsecured promissory note secured by the stock that they just sold to their key employees. That's the worst. You don't want to be in that position because,
well, you wrote a book. You wrote a book on
yeah,
that.
I had a
Being
little book I
remiss in not
wrote.
bringing it up. Yeah,
It's called The Inside Game. It talks about the 9 elements that are necessary to do this properly. And people, they follow it, they
it's
can
a
get,
really good book. Yeah, it's
yeah, and
really
I'm talking about business values that are under 10 million and under,
Yep.
12 million and under, which are good businesses. They throw off, $2-3 million of EBITDA every year. Nice businesses, but not necessarily targets for strategic buyers and or private equity.
Yeah.
But they're nice businesses, and I'm sure some of the key people that the owners have worked with to get them there would be thankful to be able to acquire that business, and there's a way to do it.
100%. And maybe that's where we'll end it on a high note.
All right, George.
So
Good
listen, Mike,
talking.
man, thank you so much.
No, my
Thanks
pleasure.
for all you do. And I'll see you around campus. I'll probably see you tomorrow morning in the coffee clutch.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Awesome. All right, man.
All
Thanks,
right,
Mike.
George.
I
Thank you. Have a good
appreciate it.
day.
You
Bye,
too.
everyone.
Talk to you soon. Yeah.